The increasing tensions between the North and South during the mid-1800s led the country into the bloodiest wars of the history of the United States, now known as the Civil War. As the fighting began, it became evident that Kentucky should finally secede from the Union and join the Confederacy. If the state of Kentucky chose to separate from the Union, the continuation of slavery would be possible. Kentucky would then not have to worry about the North and South's failure to compromise. Southern politicians would then be able to participate more and potentially dominate the government. By convincing Kentucky to secede, the South can grow into a stronger nation. 4th of July is a celebration of gifts of freedom and liberty. Slaves feel as though neither of these ideas should be celebrated in any slave's life. Slaves in the South have never known the feelings of freedom. For them, July 4th is just another day. However, slavery is the way of life for blacks in the South, and some would not want it any other way. They labor for the benefit of the entire world. The world is dependent on the South's production of cotton. Most of Europe's cotton and our own comes from 100% from the South. In 1857, the United States alone exported about $279 million in total domestic products. The South's cotton and rice itself is about $158 million, which total of $121 million difference. This means more than half of the money coming from the United States' domestic products is from the South. There is no other nation that could possibly produce this much product. With Kentucky seceding, the production of these products would continue with the allowance of slavery. The world relies completely on the production of products from the South, and without these products, the world would crumble. It is also considered that Kentucky should not secede from the Union because they are trying to stop the expansion of slavery. The North believes that slavery is an inadequate system that exploits human beings, but the Confederacy begs to differ. Their state of mind is that the Negro slaves of the South are the happiest, and in some sense the freest people in the world. If Kentucky decides to institute slavery, they would be providing the Negro population with freedom and liberties the North would not be able to produce. Northern workers are known as free laborers, and they must work or starve. He is more of a slave than the Negro, because he works longer and harder for less allowance than the slave, and has no holiday because the cares of life begins when it labors ends. While on the other hand, the South's institution of slavery allows the African American population in the South enjoy holidays, Sabbaths, and the good company of each other within their homes that are provided. Kentucky must secede from the Union to protect the South's beneficial system of slavery. One of the North and South's major issue between each other is that they are never able to reach an agreement. Both regions attempt to solve their problems by drafting compromises. They seem to work until another problem arises. For example, one of the first compromises began with the annexation of Missouri. It was finalized that Missouri was to be admitted as a slave state, but anything above the 30-degree line was to be free, which later became known as the Missouri Compromise Line. The line resolved many complications with the new admitted states until the U.S. was granted with the Nebraska and Kansas territories. The U.S. agreed upon a new policy that resulted in the repeal of the Missouri Compromise. This led to the idea of popular sovereignty. Now the citizens of the territories must solve more tension because of the failure to compromise between the two regions. Since both governments chose to disagree, the residents living in Kansas and Nebraska are now divided. If Kentucky secedes from the Union, then they would not have to worry about the uneasiness of the compromises made by the government. They would all live in harmony because the interference of government would be limited to only the Confederacy. The Union would be able to get involved with Kentucky as they do with Kansas and Nebraska. All of the citizens of Kentucky would also not have to worry about disagreements in the Confederacy's government because they all have the same mentality. An incident such as the Sumner-Preston one would have never happened if they chose to secede. Kentucky would not have to fear whether or not a senator would be caned to death because they would not have to be in a disagreement in the first place. In conclusion, Kentucky must secede from the Union because the new addition to the Confederacy would lessen the tension between the North and South. The South's biggest weakness is that they are overpowered in the government by the North. The South has not won any major election for a while now. This is because the North benefits in representation within the government. There are more free states than slave states, which is why the North benefits. By having Kentucky separate from the Union, the unequal but considered fair balance would become an advantage for the South. The South would then not be able to participate more in the government the way it's supposed to be. According to the Constitution, all men are created equal. It has become evident the South is slowly transforming into the minority. This inequality is demonstrated with the election of 1860. 3 of the 4 candidates were against slavery, which gave the South's candidate, J.C. Breckinridge, a huge disadvantage. The result of the election was that the Northern candidate, Lincoln, won with 180 electoral votes. Now Kentucky must secede from the Union because the inequality between the regions should not exist. When Kentucky secedes, it will give the South a better say in the government. The Civil War impacted the nation in so many ways. It divided the nation into regions that are still evident today. Kentucky should secede from the Union because they cannot give what they want. Kentucky wants slavery, representation, and economic benefits that the South can supply.